Hey everybody, it's Innovision, and our Super 7 vintage line of Thundercats that we pre-ordered have arrived. Today, we'll be making comparisons with this vintage line of action figures to Super 7's other Thundercats action figures. And then we're going to go on to unbox and review these bad boys. So far, Super 7's vintage line of Thundercats includes these three action figures we have on the table: Lion-O, Mumm-Ra, and Jackalman. Here we have the various versions of the Lion-O action figures that Super 7 makes. From left to right, we've got them ordered in increasing cost. So we've got the Reaction coming in at $20, the new vintage line at $30, the deluxe model at $35, and the Ultimates line at $55. And these are the MSRP values. Now, all of these action figures have very detailed paint, and we're going to attach some high resolution pictures so you can see for yourself. What I like about the Reaction line is that, if you're on a budget or you have space constraints, they're the perfect action figure for your collection because they don't take up a lot of space, but they still come with neat little accessories and they have very detailed paint. And the thing that's unique about the new vintage line is that they almost have this kind of likeness to the old 1980s LJN toys from yesteryears. So it kind of hits that nostalgia for you. But they also have very similar paint characteristics to this deluxe model that we have right here. And so the deluxe model, you'll notice, is a 7-inch action figure, whereas the vintage one is probably like 5 1/4. And that leads us to the Ultimates, which is also a 7-inch action figure, but it comes with several more accessories. It has a slightly darker color palette. You'll notice that the color palette on both the deluxe and the vintage line closely resembles the color palette of the characters from the cartoon, whereas the Ultimates more closely resembles the color palettes of the characters in the comics. Now, the sculpt for the deluxe and the Ultimates version are quite similar, but you'll notice very subtle differences. Like the sculpt on the Ultimates is a little bit beefier. Lion-O looks a little bit bulkier. He looks a little bit more trim here. And then, the vintage line has its own sculpt. It's very unique in its own sense. Also, another important thing to note is the Reaction figures have the least number of points of articulation. We have a few points of articulation here. We'll look at that in a second. But these are meant to be well articulated. These two, you can kind of pose them in any pose you want. And they have several removable accessories and arms and joints and so on and so forth. Now, the last thing we want to compare here is the box art. And as you can see, there's a big difference between the different versions. For the Reaction, we've got a picture of the toys being posed. On the vintage line, we've just got a picture of the action figures themselves. On the deluxe and Ultimates model, we've actually got a beautiful box art of the whole Thundercats team, so that looks great. Definitely these two, the box art's more impressive. I feel like this one's a little bit plain, and this one, it's kind of what you would expect. One last remark about the boxes here: the deluxe and Ultimates line might be more ideal for the collector who wants to have their things out on display but doesn't necessarily want to unbox their figures. Alright, it's time for the fun part. It's time to open these bad boys up. Alright, so we got everybody unboxed here. The first thing that caught my eye is that Mumm-Ra's cape is made out of fabric, so that's a very nice detail. And he comes with his sword of Plundar. And then we've got Lion-O with the sword of Omens and his claw shield, and then Jackalman with a battle axe. And so these figures have a few points of articulation, not like the Ultimates or Deluxe. The legs kind of move somewhat freely. They rotate around, but you can't bend. There's no joints. And on all of these figures, none of the wrists rotate. So kind of the position that they're holding their weapon, that's it. That's what you get. So here we've got the vintage Lion-O right next to the deluxe Lion-O. And as you can see, like father, like son, they have a very similar color palette. But you can definitely see the height difference here. We have a 7-inch action figure, and I think this one's 5 1/4. We've got the Thunder Tank here, which is designed for the Super 7 Ultimates and Deluxe version. And we're just going to take a look and see Lion-O going into the Thunder Tank. So, yeah. He's pretty. We're going to take a picture so you can see. But it looks like he needs a booster seat. You've got Panthro sitting right next to him. And he's like literally 2 heads lower than Panthro. So I think for $5 more, this deluxe Lion-O makes a lot more sense just because you have a lot more options in terms of accessories and playsets and things like that it'll work out with. We all know my first love besides my family and always will be TMNT, but I'm also a big fan of Thundercats. And when I was a kid, I had several of the LJN toys, but I ended up losing them all as part of a move. And so for me, you know, collecting some of these Thundercats action figures is almost like chasing the dragon or trying to find that nostalgia. And so my recommendation for many of the folks out there would be to actually get the deluxe line of action figure. You know, the deluxe line is very similar to the Ultimates line, and so it's going to be compatible with all the 7-inch figures, accessories, and vehicles and play sets that Super 7 makes, like the Cat's Lair and whatnot. So I don't know if I can recommend these to everyone. You have to be really a die-hard Thundercats fan. For $5 more, you can grab the deluxe Lion-O. The thing that's a little bit confusing about that story is that so far all they have is Lion-O and Monkian, so there's no Mumm-ra or any of the other Thundercats. So if you want some of those other Thundercats or extra characters, you're gonna have to go with the Ultimates line, which they don't necessarily make all of them anymore, and so you won't be paying MSRP for those. So it's a little bit challenging, but there you have it. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so you can keep up with all the toys, customization, and mods videos we've got coming down the pipeline.